CS 1030 classes, and welcome to our second ever Java programming tutorial. I'm glad you're here. Actually, I'm not glad you're here. I wish we were all together in class to go over this. There's going to be a lot of information today. A lot of it is self-explanatory, so that's a good thing, but some of it is brand new to you. So the nice thing is you can rewind me and go through this. You have two assignments this week for coding. One is just to follow along with this video and send me the result like you did last week. The second, I'm going to give you a problem. Like it's going to be kind of like a math problem. It's going to be a programming problem, and I'm going to give you a situation and you have to write a program to help out someone. So be looking for that assignment. So those are your two assignments, and then there's another lecture this week on problem solving with a really easy, I'm going to count it as a quiz, but all of you should get 100% on that, just sort of a case study. So with that said, let's get going. If you are not here, get here. This is my home page on REPL. If you type REPL.it, it might take you to another page. If it does that, click whatever symbol is in the little gray circle here, and it will take you to the home page. If you're on one of these guys, just click home at the top. And by now, you should have this, create a REPL, and Java should be one of the boxes right here. It's probably right here for you. Over here, it's for me. So you could just click Java, and it will create one for you. However, I'm just going to do like we did last week and click the wonderful blue little button up here. And it's going to say create new REPL, and then I'm going to click Java. And then I want you, this is very important, I want you to use a naming convention here. I want you to write your name and participation 2, part 2. That is to help me keep track of what I'm grading. Do not save over another file. Let me repeat that. Do not save over another file for today's assignment. My email inbox is very full. Some assignments I'm not seeing come through my email inbox for various reasons. And so if I mark something missing that you already turned in, it's the easiest thing in the world for you to just send it back to me and say, okay, here it is, and I'll give you a full credit. If you save over it, if you just go to an old file, delete the code that's there and start this, then we're done for. Then you have to redo last week's assignment to get full credit. So make sure you start a new file per assignment. Keep all your files there, at least until the end of the semester. Then you can do whatever with them. But this one I want named your name and participation 2 or part 2. For the assignment this week, I want ASN 1. ASSN 1. Assignment 1. That's what I want for your assignment, but for this one, part 2, now click create REPL, and it will automatically populate what it did last week. You'll have the first 5 or so lines of code when they load up here for us. Connected, booting, ready, and we're off to the races. So once again, line 1 names the file. Line 2 are attributes of the file. This is a public file that isn't going to change much. I have no idea what void means. And the main arguments are going to be in words and strings. You should know what a string is by now. And then it's going to print out hello world. I'm going to delete that right now because we are not juvenile programmers anymore. We're not amateurs. We're on our way. We don't need dumb hello world programs anymore. We're moving past that. So delete line 3 there. Before we get going, let me remind you of the basic building blocks of computer programming languages. The first is variables, which we talked about last week. Variables are anything that is going to vary or change, and they basically are saving information to a name so that when you call the name, the information is there. You are putting data and you are saving it to a name. The next thing is what we're going to focus on in this video, and that's loops. Loops are code that repeats, that loops back. So pure programmers are lazy, like all of you guys, and they do not like writing the same code over and over and over again. It's much easier to just have, if a code needs to run over and over again, much easier to just have it loop back around. The next thing is what we're going to talk about next week, and those are conditional branching. Very, very important. You use variables to do loops and conditional branches. So that's code that only runs if a condition is met. So I'll type that out for you. So it's code that only runs if a certain condition is met. And then the last sort of building block is objects. We're not going to talk about them at all in this class. If you take my programming class next year, then we do talk about it a little bit in programming. which is a lot of fun. Their entire college class is named after object-oriented programming. You're basically looping your program into objects and then parent classes and child classes, but that's sort of beyond us for a beginning programming class. But that's the fourth one. So this week we're talking about loops, code that repeats. But before we get there, we need to talk about how to save an array to a variable. Last week, we saved one piece of data to a variable. So last week we had an integer. Today I'm going to name it number, and we're going to say integer number equals 4 or 5. I typed a 5. That is one piece of data saved to one variable name. In this case, the name is number, so that when I do a system.out.println and I tell my system to print out what is saved in the number name, and I hit play, it's going to print out a 5. It should, unless I made an error there, which is something we all do, but I didn't. So it's number 5, right? So that's what we did last week. Here's the cool thing. We can actually save more than one piece of data to a variable, and that's called an array, which I talked about in that dorky little PowerPoint video I made last week. So we can actually, a variable can have multiple pieces of data, and it's actually very easy to do. You just do square brackets after you name the type of variable. That indicates to the computer program this is going to be an array. Across all computer programming languages, arrays are almost always signified with square brackets. So whenever you see square brackets like this, think an array. And then over here, in the actual declaration of the variable, when we're actually filling the variable with data, we go back to the curly brackets, and then we separate the pieces of data by commas. So right now, enter 5 random numbers. I just did 6, 7, 8, 9, and obviously close it. Just type 5 random numbers there, and I'm going to change my variable name to numbers. And I have a variable numbers, and there's not one piece of data in it. There are 5 pieces of data in it. So I've just built an array. Remember, an array is any collection of data that has the same data type. They all have to be integers. If string was here, they'd all have to be strings. If double was here, they'd all have to be double decimals. If long was there, they'd all have to be long integers. So they all have to be the same. And I saved them in a list. Other programming languages, they don't all have to be the same. In Python, you can have a string listed right next to a number. So that's kind of cool. But in Java, an array, they all have to have the exact same data type. So here they're all integers. And now there are 5 pieces of data saved to the number. So now when we print it, we have to tell it which one to print. You can't just print the whole list. You have to tell it which one to print. And the way we do that is by calling its index using the square brackets. So now system.out.println, I'm going to tell it to print the 3rd number in the list. So I'm going to tell it to print number 3 in my list. So right now I'm going to hit play, but right before I do, I want you in your head to think, to guess, which number is it going to print? Which of these 5 numbers is going to print out down here when I hit play? Think about, try to figure out which number is going to print. And we'll wait for it. Keep it in your head. Wait for it. Wait for it. It's the number 8. If you said number 8, buy yourself ice cream or something. I'd give you ice cream, but you know, we're away from each other. So the number 8 printed right there. Well, why is that? Well, if you remember from that data structure video I made, when computers count off arrays, they don't start at 1, they start at 0. And so this is actually the 0. And this is the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. I don't know what you'd call this, the 0th maybe. So the 0th, no, 0th sounds better, but this is actually the 0th. This is the 1st, 2nd, 3rd. So we told it to print the 3rd number in the array, which is actually the 4th number. I know it's a little bit confusing, but the sooner you learn that, the better it will be. So now if I tell it to print the 0th, that's an O, the 0th, then it will print the number 5 back to us. So that's how you build an array using a variable. It's an array is multiple pieces of data saved to one name, and when you deal with it, you have to tell it which position to print. In this case, 5 is the 0 position. So that's important now for building loops. Let me talk about loops real quick. Remember, a loop is something that is going to repeat. And then in Java, there are 3 different types of loops that you can do. One is called a while loop. A while loop repeats while the condition remains true. So you put a condition there and you say repeat this until this thing isn't true anymore. And when that thing turns false, then stop repeating it. A do while loop then is a type of while loop, but it's a little bit different in that a while loop might never execute. If the condition is never true, then it will never execute the loop. So if I say, while it is daytime, do jumping jacks, then if I say that and it's nighttime, you're not going to do any jumping jacks, right? Because I'm saying only do it while it's day. Well, if it's already night, then game over, you're not going to do any jumping jacks. Do means do it once and then keep doing it while the condition is true. So if I said, do a jumping jack, and then if it is day, keep doing jumping jacks until it is night, that would be a do while loop. You would at least do one, and then you keep doing them until nighttime. If it's nighttime, you do one and then stop. That's a do while loop. We do it once, but then you keep doing it while the condition is true. And then the last loop is a for loop, and this one do for a specified amount of time. So if I said do 10 jumping jacks, that's a for loop. I'm telling you, do it for 10 times. Do it for this. So in a for loop, the programmer specifies how many times that loop is going to repeat, how many times that block of code is going to repeat right at the beginning of the loop. I say do it for 10 times, you do 10 of them, you stop. Well, while I'm giving you a specified time to do it. So I hope all that was clear as day. I know it wasn't. So let me show you some examples. So first of all, let me teach you one more quick thing, and that is commenting out a line of code. Whenever you want to make a note to yourself in the code itself that you don't want the computer to pay attention to, you just begin that line with double forward slashes. That's called commenting out a line of code. You are telling the computer program, do not read this. Don't worry about this line. This line isn't for you. It's just for me to sort of keep track of what I was doing. It's a very healthy and good practice, especially if you're on a programming team and everybody's working on the same file. You really want to make almost one comment per line. Most computer programmers make one comment per line, and they say, this is why I named it this. This is what it's doing. This was my intention here. It's a very good practice. It's called commenting out a line of code. So see here with the forward slashes, it turned it all gray because that tells you the computer programming skipping right over it. So we're going to leave that commented out right there. And we're going to go down here and let me teach you how to make a while loop. We're going to use our numbers array variable up here to make life easy. And so the first thing we want to do when we create a while loop is we want to name a new variable. Usually you just call it X or you could call it Y. It's for, think algebra there. You've all taken an algebra class. And we're just going to create a new variable called X, and we're going to say it equals 0. This is very important, and just follow along. I know you're confused right now, but just follow along. And then we're going to create the loop itself. And when we create the while loop, we just type while, and then in parentheses, we put the condition. And in this case, once again, just follow along. You'll understand once we get there. In this case, I'm going to say while X is less than 4. So while X is less than 4, then we're going to say do the following. We're going to open up a new block of code with our little curly brackets. Remember those mark off blocks of code. So we're going to open up a new curly bracket, and we're going to say system.out.println array, not array, numbers and X. So print out whatever X is, print out that position in our numbers array. So if X is 0, it's going to print out like it did up here, the 0 position. And now when I play the program, I'm going to get a couple 5s. So now I play the program, and it's going to do a 5 for line 4, and then it's going to keep doing 5s ad infinitum because I never told it when to stop. I said while x is less than 4, well, x is 0, and it remains 0, and so it is just printing out 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5 ad infinitum, and it will keep printing 5s until I turn off the computer or I stop the program. So I stopped the program. Now it turned it off right here. So I just said, while x is less than 4, just print out whatever the 0 position is in my numbers array. And so it just kept printing out the 0 position, which was 5. Ad infinitum, it will not stop until you tell it to exit, until you give it the exit status 143 right there. So now I need to tell it when to stop. Now I need to figure out a way to tell it, okay, don't just keep printing out 5s. What do I do? Well, I put in the loop, I say, every time you run this loop, I want you to add 1 to x. So every time you run this loop, I want x to plus 1. So x is 0, so it's going to run it the first time, and then at the end, it's going to turn x to 1. And then when it runs the second time, it's going to add another 1, so x is going to become 2. Then x is going to become 3, and then x is going to become 4. So now when I play it, it will still print out our 5 for line 4 up here, but then it will print 5, 6, 7, and 8. So wait for it. Yep. So 5 for line 4, and then it looped through 4 times, and x went up by 1, so it printed the 0, 1 first, then it printed the first position, second position, third position, but notice it stopped. It didn't give us the 9. See that? It didn't give us the 9. That's because we said, well, x was less than 4. So if we wanted the 9, we would have had to say equals. While x is less than or equal to 4, then loop through this. Another way we could have done it was do x is less than 5. We could have just added 1, or we could do less than or equal to 4. Both work. Both are acceptable. Now when we play it, it will still give us the 5 for line 4, and then it will print the entire array for us. And then what happened was now it added 1 to x 4 times, and then when x was equal to 4, it ran again, which was the 9, the number 9, and then it stopped. That's your while loop. We use a variable, and we just say, and we give it a number, and then we say, while x is less than or equal to 4, print this number out. Pretty easy. So that's a while loop. Let me show you now how to do a do while loop. A do while loop is 10 times easier than the while loop. If you understand the while loop, the do while is just a little bit different. Remember, a do while loop is going to do it at least once and then keep doing it while the condition is true. So to do a do while loop, we type do, go figure, and then we open up the block of code. So we're saying do this, right? This is the do it once. We're telling it what to do at least once. And then there, we're going to do the exact same line up here. In fact, I'm just going to copy it right there and paste it and print out whatever number was in the x position, right? And then we're still going to have the x equals x plus 1 right there. And then outside of the block of code, right underneath it is when we're going to type the while, and we're just going to put the condition there. So, is less than or equal to 4. So we say do it once, and then keep doing it while x is less than or equal to 4. Right now, x equals 4, because this while loop is going to stop when x equals 4. So right here, it should give us at least 9 the second time. So we'll print a 5 because we're still in line 4 up here. Then it will print through the array. And then I forgot to put a semicolon there. So made a mistake. Let's try it again. Always good to go back and fix your mistakes. So there's an exception. Index 5 was out of bounds for the length 5, which basically a fancy way of saying you asked us to print whatever was in the fifth position up here, and there wasn't one. So, so that's what they did. So let's just do something here. We're going to change x back to, no, don't do that. Change x back to 4. We're just going to say x equals, actually, we're going to say x equals 3. So now we're changing, so this loop left x at 4. So we're just bringing it back 1. We're changing it back to equals 3. There we got the 8, 9 again. So it did it for a number to print number 3, and then it did it to print number 4. That's a do-while loop. The main thing you need to know about a do-while loop is it will always at least go once, and then it will keep repeating while it's true. So that's a while and a do-while. Now we're going to do a for loop. For loops are much more difficult than while and do-while loops. They're much more difficult to put together, but hopefully you can follow along and sort of get some sort of idea about how to do a for loop. So obviously, like we did with a do and a do-while, we type for. But now the conditions that go in the parentheses are threefold. First, we need to declare a variable. So this time we're going to use an I for integer, and we're going to say I equals 0. It's very similar to what we did with the x. So we are going to name a new variable as the condition and say I equals 0. So meaning start counting at 0 is what we're telling the for loop. Remember, we're telling it, this is our fancy way of telling it how many times the loop needs to repeat. So we're saying start counting at 0, and then keep counting. The second one is we tell it when to stop counting. Keep counting to number 10. So that means it's going to give us 11 numbers, right? So we say start counting at 0, name a new variable, 0, stop counting. The second one there is when to stop counting at 10, and then I equals I plus 1, which is a great way of saying that every time this loop runs, I is going to go up by 1. So start at 0, end at 10, and every loop add 1 to I so that it will give us 10 loops of the variable. So then we still need to open a new block of code. We need to tell the computer to open a new block of code, and then we're not going to bother with my variable here. We're just going to have it print I. We're just going to say now print I. Print out what I is, and now it should count to number 10. Now it should count to number 10 when I hit play. It's going to still do all this because of our loops up there, but then after the second 8, 9, it will go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and that will show us it looped through I. Yep. So it started actually at 0 and printed to 10 there. You guys can see that. So it ran for 10 times. So we don't have to have print an I here. We could also say print high. Now we can play, and it will print high 11 times, 1 for 0, and then counting up through 10. So this is basically using a variable to tell it, so you have 11 highs there. So we're basically using a variable in a for loop to count. So we're saying start at 0, end at 10, and every time you do this loop, add 1 to the 0. So we're specifying amount of times. If we change this to a 5, then it will print the highs. It will print 6 of them, 1 for 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So that's a for loop. It's a little bit complicated. You guys are going to have to play around with it a little bit. We actually have 6 of them, 1 for 5, 1 for 10. So we're going to have to, you're going to have to play around with it. But as long as you just remember this line of code, it's really easy. And just keep this at 0. And then if you want it to run 20 times, change that to 20. If you want it to run 24 times, 240 times, 24 times. So just kind of like keep line 19 here, like type that out and just keep that saved and copy and paste it. And then if you want it to run 5 times, you just change the middle number. So that's how you do that. So look at that. I got through all this information in 24.5 minutes. I'm guessing it's going to take you a little bit longer to understand that, but that's okay. But those are loops. Huge time savers when you learn how to use them, because now you're saying just repeat this over and over and over again. and you don't have to go back and forth and copy and paste a bunch of times, and your code gets really messy and sloppy and nobody can read it. So good luck playing around with the loops. I'm going to send this file to me to show me that you followed along. But then I'm going to give you another assignment that's going to be more of a problem-solving type assignment. I'm going to give you a real-life situation and ask you to write a computer code for it using loops and variables. So look forward to that. I am still here if you have questions or if you need me. If I don't get back to you right away, that's okay. I'm trying to take breaks for my email inbox just for my own sanity and also to spend time with my family. It's been chaotic for me as it has been for you, but hang in there, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed this tutorial, and good luck.